Well, it looks like boots on the ground Friday because we hear of the deployment of 2,500 Marines in the vicinity of Iran. So we know what is coming for anyone who followed the Vietnam War and how we slowly went from an invasion force of 3,500 to then 50,000 and finally 500,000, more than 500,000 soldiers in Vietnam. We know that this first little step isn't the last step of escalation and increasing this invasion force. And the first group will be to clear a path for the rest who will be coming behind them. They also clear a path with public opinion so that the public will support these actions. We got a kind of a taste of where things are heading in the most recent news conference given by uh, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the leading commander there, um, General Kane. So let's see if I can get the chair of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane. So anyway, we had some really bizarre things come up during this press conference. We're starting to see this um, bloodlust become very palpable in these military figures as they push and push and push to bring the United States in on the ground into Iran and make this a ground campaign. So the first thing about the press conference that surprised me was the that during the middle of this conference, Pete Hegseth decided a to have a spontaneous prayer, and this was the oddest thing I had ever seen at any kind of information information conference or press conference or whatever you want to call it, that someone would just go right into prayer mode. And we know that Pete Hegseth has the Jerusalem cross on his chest, meaning he considers himself to be kind of a crusader. So he has clearly in his sights the innocent people of Iran, um, and I would say all 90 million of them, not just the top leadership. He's already um, basically swept aside the bombing of a girls' school. And so we can see that the bloodlust is not stopping simply at the top level. And also another strange thing about this conference was that he criticized the media for saying that this war is expanding when it obviously is. Um, it started first as a bombing campaign on Iran from U.S. and Israel. Then Iran began to respond to these bombing campaigns, targeting Israel and U.S. bases in the Gulf states, and also targeting U.S. ships, which they then moved to a safe distance away. I'm not too sure if they got to Antarctica yet, but they definitely moved quite a distance to avoid being within firing range. So then the conflict moved to Lebanon as Hezbollah entered the scene and Israel did a ground invasion of Lebanon and are slowly moving their way up to Beirut. Then we got word of attacks from the uh, from groups in Iraq who um, were bombing the U.S. base and also attacking French soldiers. So we had a French soldier who has died, and I believe these troops were training Kurdish separatists and rebels. So anyway, then we've had expansion of this conflict in the waters outside of the Gulf states. We had a tanker bombed outside of the Iraqi port. We've had tankers hit in many different areas. So you can see this is a conflict that is mushrooming out um, and starting to bring in more and more actors. So if we go down here in this article from Politico, let's see now. Um, Here is the comment from Pete Hegseth. Bottom line up front for the world to hear, and the press to actually admit that the United States is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military. So the Iranians have been preparing for this conflict for about 20 years, and they knew that the first thing that the U.S. would do would carry out a bombing campaign. They would try to eliminate all the military infrastructure above ground. So they had already moved a good portion of their military capability below ground, and they have 1 million soldiers. You don't see in any of the images about Iran, you don't really see soldiers anywhere. So these soldiers are also in bunkers waiting for the forces of the United States and its coalition to invade Iran. So, and then if you go further down this article, one more thing I wanted to bring your attention. Well, yes, this is about the prayer during the press conference. For the second press conference in a row, Hegseth invoked his faith, telling reporters, I serve God, the troops, the country, the Constitution, and the President of the United States, and answer only to those. But we know that he considers himself to be kind of a Christian crusader, and he talked about prayer and faith and how important it was that God would bless this mission. Um, so, anyway, pretty extreme stuff. And now let's move on to this Al Jazeera article about the U.S. deploying troops to Iran. How could it play out? And they're basically saying, yeah, send in a few troops. They'll be fine. Don't worry. And here is a comment from a recent um, private briefing of U.S. senators. So we have Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut, and he says, I am most concerned about the threat to American lives of potentially deploying our sons and daughters on the ground in Iraq. Well, then we know that the decision's been made already. We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran to accomplish any of the potential objectives here. So anyway, you can see that they're slowly amping up. They've done the first, they've done the, did some attacks, the Midnight Hammer, and they did also their Epic Fury bombing campaign. So when you go to the Vietnam War, we had Operation Game Warden, and we had Operation Rolling Thunder. So they had two operations before the land invasion. Now it looks like um, we are getting two operations before the land invasion. So again, very similar to Vietnam. It's also similar to Vietnam in the sense that they're depending a lot on aerial campaigns, and thinking that because they have air superiority, that this is going to be easy peasy. So we will see what happens when they get boots on the ground. Um, we have here this article from Wall Street Journal. Pentagon is moving additional Marines and warships to the Middle East. So here it mentions about 5,000 Marines. So what was officially announced was 2,500, but what we're hearing is that it's more like 5,000. Um, and we have Republican lawmakers shrugging at more money for the Iran war. Now, once you get troops on the ground, are they going to fail the troops? I mean, that was the whole argument during the Iraq War, that the funding had to keep coming because the troops were depending on them to giving them the tools they needed to do their job. And so it's kind of backwards. You know, the funding was following, the funding is the first thing that should be done and should determine what the possibilities are. It shouldn't be following behind the the decision makers who may not be making good decisions. So the funding helps to limit the mission and to keep the military people and the warmongers in check. And if the money is just following them into every um, cubbyhole in a war, then there's no way to slow that down. They'll just continue to fund and fund and fund. So right now they're just like, no, we're not going to fund anymore. The Pentagon was assigned a huge budget, but the point is that once you get in a conflict, there's no auditing, there's no checks, there's no um, accountability for any of these operations and where the money's going, who's getting it, who's getting paid what, where, and how the money is getting from A to B. Of course, the CIA is going to step in and start moving secret money around, trying to buy um, influence in the country. So, this money coming in uh, is just bad news. But for the moment, they're holding off and they're just looking for some, small small idea they can hold on to approve this and go back to their constituents and say, hey, I was responsible with the money. They said it was going to be used for X, Y, and Z. And so, um, and then now we get this message from President Trump. He says U.S. not currently focused on recovering highly enriched uranium from Iran, which means they haven't found it yet. But it also means that once they get an idea where it may be, they will probably be putting boots on the ground at different facilities looking for it. But of course, Iran is the size of Western Europe, and it could be above ground. It could be it could be anywhere. It could be in a cave. It could be in a building. It could have even been moved out of Iran into possibly Afghanistan, possibly to some other country that's friendly to Iran. So they could have moved it out completely and then move it back in after the conflict and have the U.S. troops searching high and low in Iran looking for it. So anyway, the fact that they say they're not looking for it means that they are looking for it. And it also means that um, once they get some inkling of where it could be, we'll certainly see special forces trying to go in and grab it. And of course, it could be in any form. It could be in a gas. It could be in a solid. So would they even know where to look? Um, and well, another escalatory measure, and you say, no, this is an escalatory, you're wrong. Security Council adopts Resolution 2817, condemning Iran's egregious attacks against neighbors as Middle East violence rapidly escalates. So here there's no condemnation of the United States or Israel for bombing Iran. And of course, Iran is responding defensively to these attacks. So why is this escalatory? Because Iran knows that they really don't have anyone who is going to be standing on their side. So, it's um, this is much more existential for Iran now that this resolution passed than it was before. So this means that they're going to be more radical, um, more escalatory, because they know that they need to send a message not only to the United States or Israel, but to the world that they need to be respected. And so that is definitely escalatory. And here we have another escalatory image, um, which was a drone which hit two tankers. Here's one of the tankers. So we can get, hopefully this it won't play an ad. Um, we'll get a little bit of the uh, video of the ship and how is it looking and some, I'm not too sure who those people are, but this ship looks like it's out of commission, and I don't know if it's even salvageable. But anyway, that's definitely escalatory. And then I pulled up this information about Vietnam. I'll leave it in the description below. How this war just began in small little increments. And, after about a week of, President Lyndon B. Johnson, took his oath on January 20th, 1965, and within 7 days, they were already in a fork in the road. Um, and they needed to escalate or withdraw from Vietnam, and they just began escalating. So, I mean, it was right off the bat that LBJ got in that they began to escalate. They began to escalate the war with Vietnam, and by May, they already had their first official force in of 3,500, and then from there, they went up to 50,000 and then over 500,000. So, are we going to go down the same path? It's hard to say, but anyway, I'll leave all the links below. You can leave comments if you like about this video. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining me today. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you back for the next one. Take care.